recitation of the Lord's Prayer, followed by a moment of silence.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Now 7 o'clock. Shelby City Council meeting is called to order. Please join in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Seated, please. Call please, Mr. Crum.
Mr. Robb. Here. Mr. Roberts. Here. Mr. Gates. Here. Mr. Martin.
Present.
Mr. McLaughlin. Here.
I will now entertain a motion to dispense with the reading of the journal from March 21st, 2022.
So moved.
Second. I have a motion by Mr. Roberts and a second by Mr. Martin to dispense with the reading of the journal from March 21st, 2022. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Robb. Here. Mr. Roberts.
Yay.
Mr. Gates.
Yay.
Mr. Martin.
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin. Yay.
The motion to dispense with the reading passes. We now come to the time for public comment. If anyone has any comment they'd like to make to council during this time, I invite you to come to the podium and state your name and address and make your comment. I'm just saying, in a matter of minutes, I'll be presenting Ms. Kathy Webb with a copy of the resolution, and you might want to say a few words at that point, and we'd be glad to have you do that.
Thank you.
All right. Come to the reports from standing and special committees. Community and Economic Development Committee, Councilman McLaughlin.
I have two short briefings today, Mr. Mayor. First, on the 28th of March, the Shelby City Council of the Whole met to discuss what we would do with some of the ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act 2021, some of the funds that were sent to Shelby. Among some of the items we discussed were possible ambulance for the fire station, security cameras for the downtown Black Fork Commons Park area, tennis court repaving, lead pipe replacement program in the city. The second briefing is from today, on 4 April today. The Community and Economic Development Committee met. First off, Christina Drain, the chair of the Shelby Historical Preservation Commission, she let us know that they are currently conducting a survey of the residences above the historic district storefronts downtown, and that they are continuing research on the White Way Boulevard lights for possible nomination as a local historic landmark. Then Kathy Webb, the Marvin Memorial Library Director, she reminded us that today is National Library Week, the 3rd through the 9th of April, and also some of the events taking place this month include on 12th April at 6 p.m. the Book Vault. The theme is National Parks. And then finally, Jessica Gribbin, our Economic Development Liaison, gave us an update on the Downtown Enhancement Project. The Phase 2, which covers the Black Fork Commons area, the bids are due 10 a.m. on Wednesday morning. And then the Phase 1 construction begins next week. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman McLaughlin. Are there any comments or questions for Mr. McLaughlin in regard to his report? Mr. Roberts.
Maybe not for Mr. McLaughlin, but I see on the road closed signs, it says 30 days, and I thought we had discussed 21 days.
Mr. Rice.
It's actually 60 days.
Eeps.
So what they'll do is,
half of it, it's supposed to take 30 days and then roll over to the other half. and do that. So Main Street will stay open on one lane each time with lights.
So 30 days at a time. Makes sense, yeah. Thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. We'll move on then to Public Works and General Operations Committee. Councilman Rob.
Committee met on the 22nd and discussed a few things here, one of which Councilman McLaughlin already touched base on, and that's the bid opening coming up on the 6th. Mr. Geis advised of a roof problem at the old fire station. He was going to see if he could get somebody to have a look at that and see what that's going to take to resolve. It's also dealing with some ongoing external property maintenance issues, which is nothing new for his office. After taking advantage of the nice weather, he walked Black Fork and is currently working on reports to be submitted on floodplain management. And several pieces of legislation were discussed at the meeting, and look forward to seeing those in the future. One of them was a change in the stormwater management rules concerning retention ponds and areas. Mr. Geis and I, the committee agreed that that needed to look at, and some changes need to be made in that to make those areas the responsibility of the people in the development. Get that nailed down. And also for new subdivisions, regulations concerning downspouts and where the downspouts empty into. But the problem all over town, where they empty into the street in the sump pumps and downspouts. In the wintertime, creating ice jams and so forth in the gutters. And last legislation that's forthcoming will be on itinerant vendors. This is a registration process and permit process for those folks. Look forward to seeing those pieces of legislation in the near future. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Councilman Rob. Are there any comments or questions for Mr. Rob in regard to his report? Hearing none, then we'll move forward to reports of city officials. The full slate here under the mayor. I'll deliver the proclamations and then give just a very brief report, and then move on to proclamations of the police council. This is National Library Week. Actually started yesterday, right, Ms. Kathy, the 3rd. And so in honor of that, I'd like to deliver a proclamation on behalf of the city as National Library Week 2022. Whereas libraries are accessible and inclusive places that foster a sense of connection and build community, and whereas libraries connect people to technology, providing access to broadband internet, computers, and training that are critical for accessing education and employment opportunities, and whereas libraries offer opportunities for everybody to explore new worlds and become their best selves through access to technology, multimedia content, and educational programs, and whereas today's libraries and their services extend far beyond the four walls of a building, and everyone is welcome to use their resources, and whereas in times of crisis, libraries, librarians, and library workers play an invaluable role in supporting their communities, both in person and virtually. And whereas libraries strive to develop and maintain programs and collections that are as diverse as the populations they serve and ensure equality of access for all, and whereas to adapt to our changing world, libraries are expanding their resources and continuing to meet the needs of their patrons. And whereas libraries have long served as trusted and treasured institutions that exist as accessible and inclusive places, fostering a sense of belonging for all the members of the diversified community which they serve. And whereas libraries are cornerstones of democracy, promoting the free exchange of information and ideas for all, and whereas libraries, librarians, and library workers are joining library supporters and advocates across the nation to celebrate National Library Week. Now therefore I, Stephen L. Shagg, Mayor of the City of Shelby, do hereby proclaim April 3rd through the 9th, 2022 as National Library Week. During this week, I encourage all residents to connect with their library by visiting online or in person to access resources and services. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Shelby, Ohio to be affixed this 4th day of April in the year of our Lord 2022. And I have signed this proclamation on behalf of the city. So Kathy, it's my pleasure and privilege to present this to you. And if you might have a few words to say about our treasured library here in the City of Shelby.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Mayor Shagg, and council joining with us to recognize this week. It's a special occasion when 250 public library systems in the state and over 10,000 in the nation recognize what libraries do and what they are to their communities. The theme this week is Connect with Your Library, and you heard several ways mentioned to do that. We've also been involved in connecting with our community, and that's something I look forward to developing in the coming year. You've seen a few things there too. The Buckeye Museum has an exhibit in our building. We have outreach to the daycare, preschools, elementary schools. We're starting databases, ABC databases for job search and market research, and the North Star Adult Digital Literacy. So it's an exciting time, and we look forward to connecting with our community.
May say, and I think Mr. McLaughlin would agree, when we have our community and economic development committee meetings and Ms. Webb comes, we create such colorful calendars and something all through the month for all ages to participate in. So I would say our library here in the City of Shelby is a very active library. It's not stagnant, and we commend Ms. Webb and all of her staff and all the folks involved with the Marvin Memorial Library for what they're doing. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Also, this is Child Abuse Prevention Month, and have a proclamation here. Whereas children in Richland County are our most valuable resource, and they need our support to thrive and grow into healthy, productive adults. And whereas during National Child Abuse Prevention Month, we renew our unwavering commitment to protecting children and responding to child abuse, promoting healthy families, and building a bright future for all. And whereas every child deserves a nurturing family and a safe environment free from fear, abuse, and neglect. And whereas parents, guardians, relatives, and neighbors all share a responsibility to prevent these devastating crimes, and our local government plays a critical role as well. And whereas since 1883, the agency has been committed to helping future generations succeed and is focused on ensuring the safety and well-being of all families, and is partnering with local, state, and federal agencies to improve the lives of children and their families. And whereas I today call upon all Shelby residents to join the effort to keep children safe and families strong. Now therefore I, Stephen L. Shagg, Mayor of the City of Shelby, do hereby proclaim April 2022 as Child Abuse Prevention Month, and urge all citizens to join Richland County Children's Services and its partners as they support each family's efforts to keep themselves and their children safe, healthy, and in a nurturing environment. And furthermore, I call upon all residents to observe this month with programs and activities that help prevent child abuse and provide for children's physical, emotional, and developmental needs. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Shelby, Ohio, to be affixed this 4th day of April in the year of our Lord 2022. And we certainly applaud the efforts of the Richland County Children's Services. This month they're in focus, but we know that they're busy every month carrying out their task of keeping children safe in Richland County. And one way you can do it this week, maybe we'll take it to, is just wear blue, and we've got some blue ribbons up in some of our city offices and so forth. So trying to bring awareness to child abuse prevention month. All right. So we thank Ms. Bridget for all that she does as well. Since the last meeting, I've been occupied with typical mayoral activities. I'm not going into too many of those. Let me just come down to the last two items on my report. It falls upon me to inform you of two resignations at City Hall. Our Director of Nursing, Ms. Tiffany Ellenberger, will be resigning as of April 15th. We want to thank her for her dedicated service and for helping guide our health department through a worldwide pandemic. And so she did an admirable job in those turbulent times. And so we're thankful for Ms. Tiffany Ellenberger's efforts on behalf of our citizens, and we wish her well in the future. Also, Ms. Jessica Gribben, our Economic Development Liaison, will be marking April the 8th as her last day at the Shelby office. Jessica has certainly surpassed all of our expectations of an effective Economic Development Director Liaison. Jade Penwell, the President of the Shelby Community Improvement Corporation, expressed, I think, all of our sentiments very well in a recent email. I'd like to share just a few lines. These are the words from Mr. Penwell, and I quote, "There is no doubt that in Jessica's time with us here in Shelby, that she has been completely dedicated to its growth and well-being, but more importantly, to its people. Her love for Shelby always shines. It was not an easy decision that was made and has been even harder for her to step away from. But family is first, always. A quality in Jessica that we must always respect and also respect. We are a community of families that take care of each other, and now, as a wonderful mother and wife, she too continues to carry that torch." I think I'll just stop right there. We certainly do want to thank Jessica for her huge investment in the lives of all Shelbyans, and she will be missed, and we wish for her the very best in her future endeavors. All right. I will now entertain a motion to confirm the appointment of Linda Klein to the Records Commission.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Martin, a second by Mr. Roberts, to confirm the appointment of Linda Klein to the Records Commission. Discussion? Mr. Martin.
I would just like to say, beyond the absolute wonderful qualifications she has for this position, her penmanship is probably the best I've ever seen, to the point I actually thought it might be produced on a computer. And then I realized it was multiple lines and that wasn't possible. So I have horrible penmanship. I have my entire life, and I am jealous beyond all.
How did you notice that?
So,
It is something.
but aside from that, she's very qualified position. I'll be happy to vote for her confirmation.
Thank you. Further discussion, confirmation? Roll call, please.
Mr. Robb?
Yay.
Mr. Roberts? Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yay.
The appointment to confirm passes. Thank you. Well, I should have said the confirmation of the appointment passes. I entertain a motion to confirm the appointment of Charlie Robb to the community. I'm sorry, did I miss one? Oh, Mr. Robb to the Community and Reinvestment Area Housing Council.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. Roberts to confirm the appointment of Charlie Robb to the Community Reinvestment Area Housing Council. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Robb?
Yay.
Mr. Roberts?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yay.
That motion to confirm the appointment of Charlie Goff passes. Now I'll also entertain a motion to confirm the appointment of Steve Lifer to the Shade Tree Commission.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Roberts and a second by Mr. McLaughlin to confirm the appointment of Steve Lifer to the Shade Tree Commission. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Mr. Roberts?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yay.
The motion to confirm the appointment of Steve Lifer passes. Now, are there any questions from me or comments in regard to my entire report? Mr. Martin?
I would just like to echo the sentiments about Ms. Scriven and her work. You know, it's great when you have been in a position that you forget how that position came to be because you've done such a wonderful job in it. But there was, when we were looking at putting someone in that position, to say that there were doubts about the efficacy of that position because of past ways that we as a city had handled economic development would be an understatement. And she proved that position was indeed, first of all, necessary, but second, setting an example for how it can be done effectively within our community. And for that, I think that we will owe a great deal of gratitude to her going forward, because we have a wonderful baseline to look for in somebody in that position.
Thank you. I agree. Mr. Gates?
Mayor, I'll piggyback on what was just said. What's the time frame for a replacement for Ms. Grimmons?
I believe Mr. Penwell is to meet with Jody Perry tomorrow. And we're hoping, I hate to say the term as soon as possible, but we don't want to rush it. So I'll know more tomorrow. I'll give a better answer. Maybe I can send out a brief email of what the plan is. We also met with Barrett as well on Friday with Ms. Griffin. So everyone's going the same direction and trying to fill that position as soon as possible.
I assume that with the contract we have, and it's a three-way contract between the chamber, the CIC, and the city, I assume that up to this point we've been paying, a certain amount on a monthly basis.
Quarterly.
Yeah, or maybe it's half.
17.5, 17.5.
It is half.
I will assume that will be somehow prorated during the vacancy.
Mr. Crown?
I think that they're planning on having one of their other staff members come in and fill the necessary roles during that time. I'm not 100% positive on that, but I believe we will still be receiving a service.
Mr. Gates?
With the same number of hours that Ms. Gribbons was in the office?
That I
We'll look into that.
Well, obviously my concern is that we not pay for services that are not rendered.
Understood. Thank you. Further discussion? Or any questions or comments? All right, let's move on then to Mr. Crum, Director of Finance.
Thank you, sir. The busiest thing going on right now is certainly tax collection. Just a reminder that April 18th is the filing deadline to either file your returns or extend them, as well as make any payments for the 2021 tax returns. So, yeah, we got a couple extra days. The federal government has a holiday on the 15th, so we bumped all tax deadlines back. So we are very busy in that department. Other than that, mostly typical duties this time of year. I did get the appropriations ordinance over to the county, and that has been received. And all of that is taken care of. So that serves my report.
Thank you. And not that I would push it to the 18th, just curious about it.
Please come
For
in as
others
soon as
who might,
possible.
you
We
know,
don't want to have to have a line at the door at the last minute.
Okay. Further comments or questions for Mr. Crum in regard to his report? Thank you, Mr. Crum. I'll come to our birthday boy. His birthday is today, Mr. Gordon Ister. We should sing, but please, you have any
I'm mellow here. I would just thought with Councilmember Rob that I do have the food vendor, truck license people, itinerants or whatever that word is that I can't pronounce. It's at my office, we're working on it, hopefully we'll have something next council meeting.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? Mr. Ister? Thank you, Mr. Ister, and happy birthday on behalf of all of us. Enjoy while you still have the 4 in front of you there.
Coming to an end.
Mr. Geis, project coordinator.
Thank you, Mayor. Like we talked before, the downtown enhancements are scheduled for Monday. 60 days on Gamble intersection, and then they will move to Broadway, Macefield Avenue for 60 days, and then down to the center of town after that. So we'll keep everyone updated. We're hoping to have that done sooner than, or quicker than the 60 days, so we'll just keep adjusting everything as we need to then. So Blackboard Commons, like we said, opens up bids this Wednesday at 10 a.m. We're looking, hopefully, cross my toes, so we'll see. Our paving project opens up Friday at 10 a.m. So we'll good bids there. It's time for a new CHIP grant. So we're starting that process for the whole application. The firm we've used for quite some time, they did go through the qualification process. They would like to schedule the first public hearing, and they wouldn't do that this time before a council meeting. So at the next meeting at 6:30, we'll schedule that public hearing right here for our residents. The Community Reinvestment Area Housing Council did meet last Tuesday to review all the residential CRA agreements. All of those were approved by that committee. That information was sent on to Department of Development. And the Tax Incentive Review Commission met earlier in the month. They reviewed the commercial CRAs and the enterprise zone agreements. All those being approved or made a motion to keep them moving those forward to continue. So that's all I have there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Geis. Are there any comments or questions from Mr. Geis in regard to his report? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move forward then to new business. Under new business, we have listed local government officials conference. Mr. Gates.
Yeah, that was new business 2 weeks ago, so we'll get a jump start on unfinished business. That conference is next week, next Friday and Thursday. There's still time to register for that. It's all virtual.
Thank you.
And at this point, that can be removed from the agenda.
Thank you. All right, any other new business? Mr. Martin.
Is there a link that can be sent to our emails as a reminder for registration?
I'll see if I can.
Okay. Mr. Crump's got that covered.
Thank you.
Any other new business? Move forward to unfinished business, future use of the Main Street Fire Station. There's nothing new on that. Former ice plant property, nothing new to report as far as I know on that as well. So, I think one of the first tasks of the new economic development liaison person begins to put it in their focus. And there's unfinished business. All right, let's move on to legislation.
Ordinance number 4, 2022, enacting section 248.06 cash reserve of chapter 248, Division of Electricity and Communications of the codified ordinances of the city of Shelby.
Move for second reading. Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Martin and a second by Mr. Gates for the second reading of ordinance number 4, 2022. Discussion. Mr. Gates.
Mayor, the finance director sent an email last week in which he addressed this issue. it is significance of enough significance, I wish to read it into the record. So, first of all, I want to piggyback on John's email, meaning Mr. Ensman, regarding the electric fund PowerPoint, as well as the discussion about minimum electric balance from the last council meeting. It was discussed that the balance levelization credit going away will put us back on the right track. With the massive inflation we are seeing, I don't know if that is actually going to do the trick. We have some time and will analyze a few months after the change has taken place. But I believe that we are still going to struggle to break even, much less increase the balance. When costs go up 20%, parenthesis, my estimation, I have not gone online yet, close parenthesis, it is tough to maintain without a price hike. I know that no one wants to discuss a rate increase, but I don't think that will be all the different that every other industry right now. We did reduce that fund's administrative cost by $100,000. I don't think the general fund can take a hit by reducing that much more though. John had brought up billing the government accounts, etc., and a few other ideas, but those didn't seem to be too attractive, and in reality, I don't believe they would fill the gap. I don't think this is anyone's error that has put us in this situation. It is just a change in the economy. I want you to know that if we do our best to keep those costs down, but it is certainly going to be a tough fight if our billing rates aren't reviewed. I will know more in a couple months to see the trend without the balance levelization.
Thank you. Mr. Martin.
I just want to correct this one minor thing, but I think it's a distinction with a difference. What we discussed in our previous meeting is that the reducing of the balance levelization credit, or the ending of the balance levelization credit, may get us to where we need to. And that was in result to a certain air of panic around the possibility of us increasing rates. So it was more of a, we just don't know, we need to wait and see. So in that end, I definitely agree with the summation that we will know more in a couple months. But it was not stated that it will be enough. It just said we may, and we needed to give it some time, because at that point it had just gone into effect. We'll keep watching it as we do, and of course we'll report that to committee when it comes.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Robb?
Yay.
Mr. Roberts?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yay.
Ordinance number 4, 2022 passes its second reading.
Ordinance number 5, 2022, amending chapter 1466, flood damage prevention, section 1466.24, use and development standards for flood hazard reduction, D3, residential structures, and the codified ordinances of the city of Shelby, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
I move that the rule requiring that an ordinance be read on 3 separate occasions be suspended. Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. Roberts that the rule requiring that an ordinance be read on 3 separate occasions be suspended. Discussion? Mr. Gates.
Mayor, I received a call last week from Mr. Geis, and the state of Ohio came up with a last-minute requirement. I think that's safe to say, that changes be made to our floodplain, flood damage ordinance by such a date, and Mr. Geis can tell us exactly what that date is. But that if we did not make this change by that date, everyone's flood insurance rates would go up 5% across the board. So that's why an emergency is necessary here, to save those people, and the school district too. They buy flood insurance, and it can save them 5%.
Thank you. Mr. Geis.
Just to clarify, it was the community rating system, or CRS, so that's what we do over and above to get the reduced flood insurance through FEMA.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion requiring that ordinance for 3 separate occasions be suspended? Roll call.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Mr. Roberts?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yay.
That motion to suspend passes.
I move the ordinance be taken up and passed.
Second?
We have a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. Roberts for the passage of ordinance number 5, 2022. Discussion. Mr. Gates, guys.
The substance of this is the, section 1, there you'll see number 3, where it has the, equipment and service facilities that are elevated to 1 foot above the flood protection level. Before it had, or, gosh, I should have looked this up, I'm sorry, something about engineered or flood-proofed or whatever, so no, it has to be 1 foot above, so that's the only change.
Thank you. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Mr. Roberts?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yay.
Ordinance number 5, 2022 passes.
Resolution number 17, 2022, thanking Captain Robert D. Dean for his service as a firefighter in the Shelby Fire Department.
Move the resolution be taken up and passed.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Roberts and a second by Mr. Gates for the passage of resolution number 17, 2022. Discussion. Mr. Gates.
Mayor, I'd ask the clerk to read the resolution, please.
Resolution number 17, 2022, sponsors council members Gates, Roberts, Robb, and Martin. Thanking Captain Robert D. Dean for his service as a firefighter in the Shelby Fire Department. Whereas Robert D. Dean recently retired from the Shelby Fire Department, and whereas during his tenure of employment, Mr. Dean served for 2 years as a volunteer firefighter, 7 years as a firefighter, and 21 years as a fire captain. And whereas the council desires to thank Mr. Dean for his dedicated public service to the city of Shelby and its residents. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the council of the city of Shelby, Ohio, a majority elected thereto concur. Section 1, that the council express its sincere thanks and appreciation to Robert D. Dean for his extraordinary 30 years of dedicated service as a volunteer firefighter, and fire captain in the Shelby Fire Department. Section 2, that the council extend to Mr. Dean its best wishes for a satisfying and productive retirement. Section 3, that the clerk of council present Mr. Dean an authenticated copy of this resolution. Section 4, that the clerk of council cause this resolution to be published once in a newspaper of general circulation published within the city limits. Section 5, that all meetings and hearings concerning the adoption of this resolution have been in compliance with the codified ordinance 220.01, Ohio Revised Code section 121.22, and the charter of the city of Shelby. Section 6, that this resolution shall be in full force and effect from and after its passage, approval by the mayor, and the earliest period allowed by law.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Robb?
Yay.
Mr. Roberts?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yay.
Resolution number 17, 2022 passes.
Resolution number 18, 2022, electing to take the standard allowance of up to $10 million as the amount of revenue loss for the use for the provision of government services under section 603C1C of the American Rescue Plan.
Move the resolution be taken up and passed.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. Martin for the passage of resolution number 18, 2022. Discussion. Mr. Clark.
Thank you. Essentially, as we spoke with the committee of the whole, this is our, we received roughly $950,000 of ARPA funds. We've received half of that, we will receive the other half in the very near future. They allow us to just take a general blanket revenue loss item to transfer this into a general fund. So that meets our reporting requirements, and then we can do anything within reason with the funds from that point. So this is the paperwork to allow that transaction.
Thank you. further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Mr. Roberts?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yay.
Resolution number 18, 2022 passes.
Resolution number 19, 2022, authorizing the mayor as Director of Public Service to submit a H2O Ohio lead service line inventory and mapping grant application to the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency and declaring an emergency.
Move the resolution be taken up and passed.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Martin, and a second by Mr. Roberts for the passage of Resolution 19, 2022. Discussion. Mr. Esmond, do you want to say a word or two about this?
The original agenda had a blank application in there. Reason for that, we're actually working with Great Lakes Community Action Partnership to submit the application for us. The application came in late this afternoon. I presented this to Councilor right before the meeting. So the filled in copy, if you will, of the application is presented to you this evening. So this would be a grant for identifying the lead service lines throughout the rest of the community. It's limited to a $50,000 grant. We are applying for the full $50,000. We do believe that $50,000 is not going to cover the entire cost to identify where all the lead service lines are located in the community. This would be a good start, but we will have the assistance of Great Lakes Community Action Partnership for the work that's going to be completed, along with the service department employees as well.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Mr. Roberts?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yay.
Resolution number 19, 2022 passes.
Resolution number 20, 2022, authorizing the mayor as Director of Public Service to accept a quote from M. Smith Roofing Limited for the blower room and digester building roof replacement project at the wastewater treatment plant.
Move resolution be taken up and passed.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Roberts and a second by Mr. Martin for the passage of Resolution 20, 2022. Discussion. Mr. Henson, I guess, or Mr. Gates?
Mayor, the attachments, it seems like we have two quotes.
Mr. Henson, you want
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, there are two quotes with this. One quote would be from Ben Smith Roofing here in town, and the other would be from Alumni Roofing Company.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the different name on that, so that explains. So we've done our due diligence and gotten two quotes, and wonderful.
Very good. Mr. Gates?
Just saw this, and we submitted this to contractors to be receiving in September with the intention of having this finished June 1st, as you'll see on the bottom of there. There's no way in the world that's going to happen. We talked to the contractor, it's likely October. Getting materials in this time is very hard. His comment to us was, when he got a quote from materials from supplier, he says, how long is the quote for? He said 2 hours. So they have to have them bought, and then they have to wait for months before these things, materials are arriving. So it will be October, not the June 1st. So.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Mr. Roberts?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yay.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yay.
Resolution number 20, 2022 passes.
Resolution number 21, 2022, authorizing the mayor as Director of Public Service to enter into a professional services agreement with Cellsite Capital LLC to perform consultation for citywide broadband.
Move the resolution be taken up and passed.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Martin, a second by Mr. Roberts, for the passage of Resolution 21, 2022. Discussion, Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. We've obviously been going down this road for our broadband for quite a while. I think Mr. Insman and I have been doing this for about 6 years. And many have asked me why I'm so adamant that we look at this and explore these as options. And I try to explain that it is the infrastructure of the 21st century. Can you imagine a situation where, because we are in a rural community, the only thing available to us is to have our roads be gravel? And we can't actually pave our roads because Columbus has said that we can't do that as a public company. We have to rely on private infrastructure to be able to come through, and the private companies will only produce gravel. And in a couple situations, they might actually do some like tar and chip and seal. But we can't get paved roads, we can't get asphalt, because that's what's being determined for us by outside. We would all be throwing a fit. And all of us would say that it's the job of us as a community to provide the infrastructure for success for our citizens. That is the situation that faces us and many communities like us all across the United States when it comes to the information highway and broadband. We are basically dictated to what speeds we can get, what reliability we can get, what customer satisfaction we can get, with absolutely very few actual choices. And God forbid, in the city of Shelby, you decide to build a house on a road called Technology Parkway, because you probably aren't getting technology. And if you build a business there, they might provide it to you, but if a tornado decides to take care of that infrastructure, they say, nah, we did it once, we're not going to do it again. And the community has to beg, borrow, and steal to try to get you connectivity for your business. That's the situation that faces us. And that's the situation that faces many communities like ourselves. So to answer the point, why is it important? Because the information superhighway is the key to success for so many students and so many businesses, and more importantly, so many dreamers within our communities. Good ideas don't just happen on the coasts here in America. Good ideas don't just come from venture capital funds in San Francisco or New York City. Good ideas come from everywhere. And that's something that as a country we used to have as a standing ideal. And now it isn't that way. Doesn't matter if you have a good idea as a student at Shelby High School. You better try to get a plane ticket to Silicon Valley if you want to see it come to fruition. Or else it's not. And in this day and age, that is a shame. And especially a shame for a community like ours with a legacy of ours. We used to have the most millionaires per capita of anywhere in the United States. Ohio used to produce more patents than anywhere else in the world. Now, major patents are happening in places like Minnesota because of healthcare, Silicon Valley, and New York City. And patent rates have dropped precipitously in flyover country where we happen to live. And as we face a brighter future with companies like Intel deciding to build their facilities in our own backyard, we have to embrace that challenge that comes with it and say that for our community, we choose to try to put in place the best possible infrastructure for the success of our children and our grandchildren. We have to stop being satisfied with small dreams. We have to stop being satisfied with small ideas. Our grandparents believed in big ideas. Our fathers believed in big ideas. We made it to the moon with the computing power that we carry around in our pocket surpasses it by 100x. built this country on big ideas and big dreams. But for our children and our grandchildren, we keep on telling them, your big ideas, your dreams aren't enough. You'll never get the funding. You'll never get the financing for your ideas. The whole way that we do business in America now is predicated on, we'll go ahead and give you $110,000 for a college degree without any kind of capital backing, but we won't give you $10,000 for a business loan. Those things have to stop if we are to reclaim our stake in the world as the hegemonic power of authority and freedom. We have to stop thinking small. And so that's why I'm so adamant about these projects. There's been some conversations that have come to light with some potential capital and investment within our community. And we are trying to get some answers to some questions around that. There is some potential for using ARPA funds, using infrastructure funds, so that we don't have to incur these costs on our citizens. And so we're waiting on some key answers on those things. So I understand that this is a $50,000 contract. I understand that there are some reservations with spending that much on this contract. I want to first of all say I have no hesitation to spend that kind of money on this investment, because it will allow us the key answers to whether we go forward or not with this project. However, in lieu of us waiting on some additional answers and some additional information, I would move that we postpone this resolution to the May 2nd committee, City Council meeting.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Martin and a second by Mr. McLaughlin to postpone resolution number 21, 2022 to the May 2nd meeting. Discussion. Roll call on the motion to postpone.
Mr. Robb?
Yay.
Mr. Roberts?
Yay.
Mr. Gates?
Yeah.
Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yay.
The motion to postpone passes. Come to miscellaneous business. Is there any miscellaneous business to be brought before council? Mr. Gates.
Mayor, in addition to the portion of Mr. Crumb's email that I had read that applied to the other ordinance, or the other resolution, no, that wasn't ordinance, this resolution, he makes a comment, I know that another internet service provider is coming in on Monday to talk about renting our lines for us. My question is who is that other internet service company?
Mr. Hensman?
Thank you, Mayor. Company's name is Omni Fiber. Omni Fiber.
Oh, Mr. Gates.
Mayor, and what do we know about this company?
I've had 2 meetings myself. Today, Mayor Shea, Councilman Martin, and Finance Director Mr. Crum had engaged in a conversation with Omni Fiber. They are a relatively new startup company getting into the broadband services for pretty much rural communities in the state of Ohio. They're focusing on north central and northwest Ohio. They did their research on the city of Shelby, realizing we've had a feasibility study completed. We have a fiber trunk line that services the town of Registry. They have quite a bit of knowledge in the field, where the majority of the individuals with the startup company come from Cincinnati Bell, with many, many years of experience. They do have some public experience with one of the gentlemen who worked for the city of Lebanon with their broadband services there. So they do have some very credible experience and knowledge behind that.
Mr. Gates.
Mayor, does this company have a relationship with any other municipal electric system in the state?
Not that I know at this time. They're a relatively new startup company with lot of capital behind them due to their experience of what we've got. But they're working with communities of our size and neighboring communities as well to establish internet service for rural community at very competitive prices.
Mr. Gates?
Competitive prices are always good. Well, Mayor, I expect that we will hear much more as this situation develops.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Any further miscellaneous business? Mr. Gates?
Mayor, I move council adjourned.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gates and a second by Mr. Martin and a sneeze by Mr. Roberts. Roll call, please.
Mr. Rob?
Yay.
Mr. Roberts?
Yeah.
Mr. Gates? Mr. Martin?
Yay.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yay.
Council adjourns at 7:54. Thank you, gentlemen. There.
Round two.